Today's day 61 of Art Every Day. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, what I've been doing for the past 2 months, I've just been trying to do a little bit of art every single day, and then just recording that and sharing it with everyone. So if that sounds like something that you're into, just watching the process unfold, then stick around. Feel free to watch today. I do ramble and go on tangents, so that's just typical for these videos so far. So today I'm doing some more Studio Ghibli studies. So yesterday I took a scene from, I believe it was Grave of the Fireflies, with the younger sister on the swing, and I just did a value study with that. I didn't know how it would turn out, and I made the observation that while I had a lot of fun, and I'm starting to build the skill of identifying composition and building composition. So the way that it flowed through like this, and there's sort of like this door here, another door down this way, and then her right in the middle here, like on her swing. So I'm figuring out how to identify and quickly sketch compositions. She's sort of looking back. Bit of a hill here, some trees there. And so I've got it figured out where I can say, okay, here's about a third, here's about half, here's about another third, here's about another third, so on and so forth. But, and then I also had a pretty decent time finding the values. I think they were a little bit different from the original, and that might chalk down to the fact that the values are different from screen to screen. So I've got them on a different monitor, and I've tried to match these screens before, but this drawing tablet, the colors are much more vibrant, much more saturated than the ones that I look over and see on my other monitor. And there's a brightness to it too, so you know, but what I noticed, right, is even though I'm getting better at identifying value, at identifying composition, I'm struggling with the smaller details and the patience that it takes to go in and draw some of these plants that exist in the scene. And then I think I have a hard time finishing, right? So I don't know when to finish the work. I don't know when to add detail, to stop adding detail, because I'm sort of on this path where I have to set stops for myself and like realize my limitations. Because if I keep trying to do something and it turns out not the way that I want it to, then I might get discouraged. And so that's something I recognize. It's something that I'm trying to work around and work with. So treating myself as another person to slowly take through step by step, right? Not to jump in all at once and say, oh, this is easy, I'm gonna just make the whole thing first try super easy. It's just not realistic. But I think everyone, if you have a knack for seeing, and there's something about when you look at an artwork, it's like, oh wow, somebody did this, and it gets you thinking like, oh, could I do that? Sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I could do that, and you really can't. You might not be at that level yet, or maybe you're doubting yourself and you're saying, oh, I could never do that. And so you've got to find where you're at, and you've got to balance the scales. If you think that you can do it and you really can't, give it a try, get a reality check. If you don't think you can do it, but you really can if you put in the effort, give it a try and get a reality check. What you're gonna find out, if you're too balanced on the one side saying I can't do it, and you do it, or not even you do it, but you make something that's somewhat close to what you're trying to do, It's gonna boost your confidence just a little bit. Gonna make you feel good about yourself, boost your endorphins, get the serotonin pumping. And then in the inverse, if you think like, oh man, I really can do that, that's got to be easy, and then you try it, and then you can't, you're gonna get knocked down a peg. I think everyone needs to have a little reality check every once in a while, and our egos can get in the way of progress. Because if we think that we can do everything, right? If you think, oh, I don't even need to try, that doesn't look too hard at all, then you're not gonna try, and you're not gonna find out whether you can or can't. And it's important to find our limitations, to find our skill sets, to find where our starting point is, and where to go from there. So my starting point for this, I'm finding out yesterday, is I need to learn how to. Hold on a minute, I'm gonna turn this music a little bit down. There we go. I'm still experimenting with the volume. But as I was saying, my starting point is I've got some of the basics down, some of the framework, some of the structure, but I need to be able to not just block something in, not just get the ideas, and because, like, you know, you can draw blocks like this and say, oh yeah, there's a building, and here's a building as well. And depending on the level of detail that you want, this might be okay for what you want, right? You've got your little streetscape. But there's a lot of value in learning how to go in and make some of these finer details. It's like, okay, I've got these forms, but how do I build on top of the form and make it believable, make it realistic, not just an abstraction? Even though all art is abstraction and all representation of the not real thing or the real thing, representation is abstraction. We talked about this a lot in school when we were making maps. You know, you can have a map of somewhere. Like, I'm from New York State, so here's, you know, I've got New York. Maybe this isn't the best map, but it's not too bad. Long Island there. And if I want to get from point A to point B, I gotta go through here. Do you actually see the world the way that you see the map? No, it's an abstraction. And there's gonna be information that you leave in, information that you take out. And so what I'm essentially trying to say is I'm good at getting the very abstract, but I'm not so good at including more. So my goal for today, I'm going back to ghibli art. I'm gonna pause for coffee, but I'll shout across from the apartment. Maybe you'll be able to hear me. So my goal for today is to learn how to make some of these smaller, finer details. And the more smaller pieces you put in your toolbox, the easier it is to take them out and put them in something bigger. So if you've got the form and the structure of the building, but you don't know how to draw windows, then you're just gonna have a box like this. But if you spend a little bit of time learning how to make one brick pattern, and you understand the way that they're laid out, the way that they're layered on top of one another, that's all you need. And I can hypothetically take this pattern and fill the entire box with these little bricks. So these tiny details scale up and turn into details that you wouldn't see otherwise. not actually sure if that sentence made sense, but you get the point. I'm sort of illustrating that here. And now, drawing this level of detail on every single brick of every single building, that's not always possible. That's not always good for legibility. So that's what I mean when I say you gotta find the right level of abstraction, or at least I still need to learn the right level of abstraction. And you can take some of these smaller details. I'm gonna draw one more box here, and that's our side of the building. You can just draw little tiny details in some of the accent pieces. So here's a suggestion of a brick. There's a suggestion of a brick over here. Maybe there's a shadow that's being cast above, and so it makes seeing these a little bit easier depending on the lighting. But just a couple bricks here and there. That's all you need to hint at the pattern of the whole thing, right? Or maybe, if you want, you can frame these and put some holes in there. And all of a sudden, we've got some plaster on a building that maybe there's a texture that's being evoked by the idea of this broken plaster face, or cement that's showing the brickwork underneath. So you can do a lot with very little. You can do a lot with very little. And I need to learn the little things. And so what I'm doing today, I'm following along a video. I'm just doing a couple quick steps in it. I'm gonna put the video down below if you're all interested in following along as well. I'm not sure how to pronounce their channel name. I think it's Okigia. I think it's Okigia Art. She's amazing at doing Studio Ghibli type work. She spent a lot of time studying Ghibli in order to replicate that style, using poster paints and gouache the same way that they do. So super cool. You know, I just kind of stumbled on her channel by accident. And I love her work, so I'm probably going to be pulling from more of her videos and tutorials in the future. So check her out if you haven't. And again, I'm going to put the link to the video that I'm following below, and I'll at her in the description of the video as well. So what she's doing, her video is how to paint Studio Ghibli style foliages and bushes, and I think that's the right scale for what I need right now. And so she's doing a study where she's just taking a scene from Ghibli, and she's breaking down some of the plants inside of it. And you can do the value study and learning how to layer them on top of one another, but I'm just gonna start with the first step that she starts with. So it's finding a Ghibli piece, and then going in and identifying some of the brush strokes, some of the forms, some of the ways that these are represented. So this scene, I had a hard time finding Ghibli work on the internet. If you type in Studio Ghibli plants, a lot of it nowadays is AI generated, or someone on Etsy that's selling a little planter with a Totoro statue in it, which is cute, but that's not what I'm looking for, Google. So I found on Reddit, somebody has a folder in Google Drive. It's a public folder, it's shared, where they have Studio Ghibli scenes and backgrounds upscaled. And these are great for studies. I'm gonna link those down below as well. This scene is from Kiki's Delivery Service, which I feel like that's one of the Ghibli movies, and it's one that I haven't seen yet. So, a bit embarrassed about that, but that's just the facts. So I'm gonna go back and watch it at some point. Maybe it'll be a little more tame than Grave of the Fireflies. So here, what she was doing, she was going through and identifying, okay, here's a light area in this bush. There's a light area in this bush, and forgive me for copying if you're watching this, but I've heard it said that replicating the masters is the best way to learn. So I consider you a master. Ogija art. Another bush here, a shrub, and it looks like there's a little bit of light, just highlights from the shadow of the tree sticking out, possibly. And one thing I've realized is not all lighting makes sense in these scenes. So what do I mean by that? I don't see a gap up above where this light source is coming from. And you can see this tree is a cylinder, and here's our darker values and the lighter values as we continue along. Really rough sketch there, but you get the idea. And so you can see the light should be shining down, maybe from here, casting down to there. Or maybe it's up a little higher as well, because we've got this line here, so that shines down in this direction. And so maybe it does make sense. So we've got the shadow of the tree that comes up and around, and then we've got the foreground here that's highlighted. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna go through and identify some of the brush strokes, right? If this was a painting that somebody had done, which I'm pretty sure all Ghibli backgrounds are either poster paints or gouache paints. Something I've been trying out a little bit with gouache, but I still need to try out poster paints. I have not done that yet. And so what she did, she really helped herself by cropping down and identifying just a smaller area, much smaller area, to use as a reference, right? So maybe not this area, because I want more types of foliage. I think we've got a little bit of every foliage in here. So simplifying it and identifying pieces of interest. So I'm just gonna go in and I'm gonna look at how they did this, what brush strokes they used. So it looks like they've got, for this one, just a simple brush stroke down through, and to make these sort of lancet leaves, just a stroke and then point it out at the end. So very gently. One thing I love about some of these leaves, right, the way that they're painted is very true to life, where you've got the very thin, I should know the name of this, but you've got this thin attachment to the main stalk of the plant, and then as it flares out, this leaf warps and changes, and maybe that's just a mistake of the artist's hand, but I think that's how they look in real life as well. And you've got, at the end here, it's very often, it's very common for the tip to be bent in a different direction for certain species of plants. So we've got those sort of brush strokes, just these sweeping, clean, light, mostly equal brush strokes for the grass blades. And I've got to learn how to do this a little better with digital art, using the pen pressure correctly. But I have a tendency to have a heavy hand and I press way too hard. So maybe I need to adjust the pen pressure settings, but for now I think this is fine. So we've got two types of foliage identified there in the foreground. We've got these shorter pieces of grass interspersed. Then these plants, the flowering plants, they've got these very nice wide alternating petals, and you almost can't even see where they attach to the plant. What I mean by alternating, here's your botany fact for the day. if there's a plant, if all of the leaves attach at the exact same point, or all of the structures attach at the same point, it is an opposite plant. And opposite plants are few and far between, so they're much easier to identify. So you could have like a maple tree, for instance, are opposite. And so you've got these leaves that come off the end, and the leaves themselves are opposite. So if this is actually a branch, the branch of the leaves would look something like this. And then that branch would look something like that. And then you've got your leaves on the outside here. I think it could be fun. I think it could be a lot of fun to have a botany month where I just study plants and I study how to draw different species of plant. So thoughts on that, feel free to drop below. And I do have a Discord as well, and that might be a fun challenge for the whole group. If not for a whole month for everybody, just something for everyone to learn if they haven't learned their botany yet. It's very important. For me at least, and for my job. Excuse me. I am still a little bit sick here today, so I apologize for that. So I might cough, I might have a nasally voice, even more nasally than usual. What else have we got? So these plants, these are great because you can't see all of the connections between some of these leaves. You just get the impression of the connection, right? So they sort of float into the light. So here's our shadow beam. We call it our light beam. I don't know what I just did, but I just changed my brush. Oh, I can't see the shape. Oh well. So we've got this beam of light, and here's the bush. So some of these leaves are not gonna, they're gonna connect to spots that are in the shadow. So it's cool to see that represented here. And so they've got these sort of odd, differing, just wider leaf shapes. These clusters here. And usually they've got like an edge. Sometimes they've got a pointed edge here. This one's got a pointed tip. This one's got a pointed tip, but you can't always see it for all of these. So just enough to imply that this is a leaf is good enough, it looks like. And then as it rounds out into the light areas, the cluster of lit leaves sticks out from the rest here. There's one more leaf in there somewhere. And so we get this effect. So that's pretty neat. Now, grass. These grasses especially got a lot of, I didn't realize these are almost all this exact same hue and value, this cluster here. And maybe this matches this hue and value down there. But that's beside the point for now. Just the way that they've done it, it's very intuitive. They've sort of just gone through and painted these strokes. Gentle strokes. And you gotta be careful not to do too many in too many clusters, because then individual blades of grass get lost with the others. So just enough to imply in some spots down here, the same concept as the bush. It goes into the shadow underneath, so you only get the hint of the blade on some of these. So that's a cool thing to note. In some of these shadowed areas in between here, I'm curious how they did this. If they did the mass first and then came back in later, or... And that's probably what they did, right? I'm just gonna assume that that's what they did. So, those are some plants. Another one here. Just sort of very heart-shaped leaves here. Cordate, I think that's called. So there are some plants to emulate. So, and then I can't believe I missed these, but the leaves and the trees up atop. These are a bit larger than my brush can do at this scale. So if I zoom out a little bit, maybe, yeah, there we go. And the way that these are drawn and the way that these are clustered, it looks like we've got, man, I'm just trying to understand the light and the way that the light operates in here. It's so cool. The grass in the background acts as this backlight to contrast the shadow of the tree, which I think is very cool, very beautiful. And that's really the brightest point of this entire composition, it looks like. Now that it's cropped, at least, I gotta go back and check. So my goal for today is to, as she does in her video, just practice how to paint and draw, for my intents and purposes, draw on the tablet these different plant patterns, right? And so there's a library of plant patterns that Ghibli has done, and they usually get clustered into brush packs for Photoshop, so that way you can just copy it and just paint over and it'll appear. But we're doing things the long way and the hard way. So what we're gonna do is just pull it up to the side over here, and we're just gonna look at it. So here is, this one's gonna be trees, and the way that they do trees. There's a leaf here. Of course, it depends on the tree as well. If you have an evergreen tree, it's gonna look much different. And a lot of these leaves sort of alternate with one another as well. So you've got some leaves that stick off. Oh man. Gotta get really better at tapering these and being more gentle. So we've got clusters of like 2 at a time almost, and gaps in between those. Or at least in some of the edges. And then the rest of the tree is just like so. I'm gonna just make the brush a little bit bigger. This is also, it turns out, a practice in Photoshop and learning how the pressure sensitivity works, it looks like. So this is good. This is good. Maybe in the future, I've said it before, but I do want to find a way to record in a controlled setting what I do with my gouache paints and my gouache sketchbook. And that's usually just when I'm out and about on my own. On a day like today, it's Saturday. There's a farmer's market here in Troy, New York. It happens every Saturday. And I love to go out and just sketch the buildings and sort of get the vibe of the people and paint that with the watercolors or gouache. So that might be not something I do today or yet, but doing something like, if you're familiar with James Gurney, what he does for his videos, that would be a lot of fun, I think. Great practice. So there's that. Let's get another plant in here. So here's sort of a leafy herbaceous plant. Not quite in bloom, it looks like. But would be soon. Alright, so there's that. Grasses. If you want to learn about grasses, we've got a saying from the school that I went to. We had a plant identification class. Sedges have edges. Rushes are round. And grasses have joints that come up from the ground. And the way that I learned it and remembered it, if you had the cool professor, and usually they gave you both ways of doing it. Sedges have edges, rushes are round. Grasses have joints when the cops aren't around. So it's from a different era. It's weird to look back and say that, see that weed was illegal for so long. Now that I'm in New York State and it's just kind of everywhere. Or not now that I'm in New York State, but since I'm in New York State and it's just commonplace. You know, just go out to the stoop. I don't really use it anymore. Just a matter of preference. I found that when I did, I wasn't having a good time. You know, it was fun to try out, for sure. But it got to a point where I would just start to get really, really anxious and paranoid, and it just wasn't good. It wasn't a fun time. And so I thought, why would I do this if I'm not having fun? And then there are other host of issues that come with it. I think maybe get underplayed here in the US or here in New York, in countries and cultures where it's been normalized to some extent. It's not some kind of miracle cure, right? That's gonna fix everything. There are many people who I know, and myself included, it just, after a certain point, it's a numbing agent. And you think like, oh, well, it's better than alcohol because it doesn't numb you or anything like that. Over enough time, yeah, it does. And it really does kill motivation. And I think I noticed that in myself as well when I was getting ready to stop. I wasn't very motivated. I didn't want to do things. I just wanted to chill out and hang out. And like, to some extent, I still do. But it enabled it. And it made it much easier to do, I'll just say. So here's another plant style. And there's some of these bushes also got rounded edges towards the tips. So we've got like clusters. Comes up like that. But there's nothing wrong with it if that's something that you want to do. I'm not here to say that you shouldn't do it, but for me, it was the right choice not to. I think my life has improved dramatically since then. There's still a lot of challenges, as anybody has. Things that I've got to get sorted out. Problems that I need to solve. But overall quality of life has improved, for sure. I'm gonna keep going through And now I'm just looking at, I'm not looking at the reference image anymore, but I'm looking at the brush pack that advertises that you can just use this for any plant. And I maybe you can if you want to, but I think you lose something if you do that. I gotta figure out how to do this because it's like out, then up, up, and up, up. So these are alternate leaves. Looks like a fern. Not quite. And these are much more rounded in the image that I'm using, but again, I just don't have the pen control quite yet to know how to do this. So when they stick out side to side like that, it's much more fern-like. But in this reference image, and they do have ferns that are like that. In this reference image though, it curls up a lot more. So I'm gonna try and replicate that. Something like that. And I don't see a stem that cuts through in the reference image that connects all these. So I think it's just implied, which I think, you know, I was talking about levels of abstraction. If you just imply something, your brain will fill in the gaps. So I don't need to draw that stock in. It just looks fine on its own, I think. Ooh, stretch here. So these are just a few plants out of the many styles that exist. Styles, variations, types. Let's try get a few more here. This is almost like a Queen Anne's lace. Not quite, but Queen Anne's lace, it would be more like so, but it's good enough. So you get the idea with this one. There's so many different ways that these herbaceous plants grow. Sometimes they have sort of wide gaps between the flowers, like that one. Sometimes they've got very dense clusters of branches and flowering bodies towards the top. It's a little more something like this. And again, maybe I don't need as many flowers on the top, even if in real life there are this many flowers. You only need a few to suggest the plant. I'm just gonna do one or two more here, I think, and then call it a day. So I'm just gonna draw just sort of like a flowering, not a flowering grass, but what is this? Small, it's very gentle, very delicate looking. this. Just a few flowers up the top. A flower over here. A couple more flowers in the air. And again, I'm not drawing the stalk that actually connects these, but the suggestion alone is enough to make you think that something's there. Your brain will fill in the gaps. And when the brain fills in the gaps, somebody said, I think it was James Gurney, you become a participant. The observer becomes a participant in the painting, or the drawing, or the sketch, whatever it is. Because you are now actively engaging with it and filling in those gaps. So, yeah, it becomes a part of you as much as you become part of it. So I thought that was a pretty cool way of framing it. I think this is good enough for now. So I don't have a full page of plants silhouettes. There are a few more that I could go off of in the brush pack, but I think that this is good for what I want. These are a lot of the plant forms that I think I would use in the future. Maybe one more here, where again I was sort of talking about how I gotta figure out the brush control. So starting from the outside and then working the way in to get these tapered edges. And the rounded leaves. So something like that. But this is it. Thanks for stopping by. This is a little bit of an early video, and it's not, how should I say? It's not a typical day for me. But it's just enough to get my brain flowing, to learn, and a small stepping stone for what I want to be able to do in the future. And I think that doing little studies like these, maybe I'll do some more in my free time, is gonna help in the long run. So thanks again for stopping by. If you like this video, like this style of video, where he's just chilling out and talking while I draw, feel free to subscribe. Check out some of my other videos. It's mostly that. And maybe I'll see you tomorrow, I hope. Thank you.